Thursday's games, 7 on in the NBA. The Warriors, they make a change to their starting lineup that doesn't just include replacing Draymond Green. We're going to cover all of that, waiver wire trends. It's all coming up, along with Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and this show is like Jaws, if everyone in Jaws worked for Jaws. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code, all lowercase, LockedOnNBA, for a first deposit match up to $100. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. Slightly busy Thursday, and we got some answers to the Draymond Green Golden State Warriors situation. We got some other big and surprising performances. A lot for us to talk about. Oh, yeah. And what would you know that Ty Lue and Paul George are liars? What a shock. We're going to talk about all of that in this recap. We will start just by looking at a little bit of news across the NBA. There were some roster moves, relatively insignificant, but worth talking about anyway. The Hornets, the Spurs, and the Kings all made moves. We saw Sacramento sign Juan Toscano Anderson to a regular contract. I don't think it's going to have any impact in fantasy. The Spurs waived Serge Ibaka Rice. He was a two-way, and they brought back, Burning Cross's legend, David Duke Jr. He's back. Again, not going to make too much of a difference. The Hornets made one that does probably make a difference. The Salt Flake, Theo Maledon, he's out. They cut him. The big fella's gone. What this move does, well, I'll tell you who they signed. Nate Mensah is the guy they signed, who's a big guy. Them waiving a point guard, Maledon, who had been relatively useful for them this season and last season at times, and signing a big man in Mensah gives me two things. It means they're not that worried about LaMelo Ball, and he will return, but is there an extra worry there with either Mark Williams or PJ Washington? Because at the moment, there's only JT Thor and Big Dick Nick Richards as the big men. So is Williams back, and he is doubtful for tomorrow, and Washington's shoulder, his questionable. Obviously, there's not anything massively long-term with Washington, but the thing you've got to worry about with Charlotte is the doubtful tags. Is they will list guys doubtful for weeks and weeks on end. And that is what is happening to Mark Williams here. I am getting concerned now. And for some reason, it didn't really click to me that the doubtful tag was getting slapped on Williams every day. They did this with Rozier, with Martin, with Hayward, with someone else at the start of this season, and they just ruled them out for weeks and weeks and weeks, doubtful every time. And that's what we're getting with Williams. And now they cut a point guard and signed a big man in Nate Mensah. Not saying that Nate Mensah is going to be this guy that's a savior and they're going to use him all the time, nothing like that. But it's like, ooh, is there a little bit more of a worry paired with the dubious injury reporting of the Hornets? I am a little concerned. The good news on the injury front was the speaker, Keynote George. Looks like everything's all right. He's going to miss at least 2 games. Maybe it's a week. Colin Sexton told us this yesterday, the Padawan, giving us information. So, yeah, it's fine. You got some good news. And then we were like, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Turns out it was okay. Looks like there's nothing seriously wrong. And you can slide him into your injured spot. If you actually do need that spot, I get it. You could drop. I probably would hold, considering it's only a short-term thing. But it looks like we've got some positive news there on Keontae George. And there is some positive news also on Tyler Hero, who's going to be back Monday or Wednesday next week. So that'll really shake things up in terms of the millions of millions, which is an exaggeration, of Heat streamers that we've been able to use over the past couple of weeks while he has been out. Still no full update on Bam Bam Adebayo, but just some good news in general. Let's look at some waiver wire trends. Who's been added, who's been dropped. Not gigantic surprises here. The most added player over the last 24 hours is Brandin Podziemski, up 48%. Second is Tari this season, up 36%. And third is Jonathan Kuminga, up 36%. They were the three guys that we really talked about as guys to add with opportunities rising. We're going to focus on the Warriors guys when we talk about the Warriors game later on. But suffice to say, both Podziemski and Kuminga did start today. So we'll talk about how that all looked later on in the show. Colin Sexton, with the injury to George and the injury to Clarkson, I don't mind adding Sexton. I think he's actually pretty much worthwhile. And the other two ads there were Dario Saric, another Warriors one to talk about, and then Dante Exum up 10%, who continues to play pretty well. And we'll talk about that when we get to the Mavericks game also later on. Who are the most dropped players? Number 1 was Draymond Green.
Get that garbage out of here!
Number 2 was Eric Gordon, down 28%. 3, Obert Toppin. Yeah, very, very clear 12-team drop. Aldama down 13. DeAndre Hunter down 12. And Orlando Robinson down 12. Now, I've got absolutely no problem with Orlando Robinson being dropped. A little curious that he would have been dropped on the second half of a back-to-back. Not that it was the wrong decision, because he was shitful today. Absolutely terrible. And you can go and move on from him. But usually, when you're making waiver moves, unless it's for a real long-term thing, and it could have been, they could have been dropping a Robinson to grab a Podziemski or an Eason or a Kuminga or whoever. But usually, be like, I'd just like to be able to get an extra game or two out of this waiver move, and dropping someone playing on a back-to-back usually isn't the way to go. But again, sometimes you sacrifice the short-term gain in order to get something which you hope turns into some long-term value. That's the aim. That's where we look to go to. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. Let's go to the first game of the day, the Cleveland Cavaliers. They took on the old mate Boston Celtics, 116 Boston, 107 Cleveland. Still no Evan Mobley. Yeah, we continue to be really a little bit concerned about how long this is going to take for him to come back. We got Don Mitchell playing 40 minutes. David Bickerstaff, geez, how do you reckon Evan Mobley developed knee soreness? I don't know. Do you reckon 8-man rotations and 36 minutes a night for a big man? Maybe. I don't know. Speculating. Don Mitchell, 31, 8, and 6 was great. Garland wasn't quite as good, 19, 2, and 3. But we finally got a big Dracaris LeVert game. 35 minutes, 26, 3, and 5, 3 steals and a block. Now, it's very, very important not to overreact to this. He's still 143rd over the last 2 weeks. He's been bad in basically every game for the last 3 weeks or so, and he's missed a bunch of time. This is super encouraging. He shot well from the field. He took a ton of shots. He got to the line a lot. I don't fully buy it, but if you wanted to have a look at it, go for it. All right, but don't have super high hopes. On the flip side, I am a little worried about the Winter Soldier Max Strus. Not that I think that Strus is losing his starting spot, but he now is 234th over his last 5 games, 5 points, and the most important thing here is no defensive stats, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 of 5 shooting. We saw him do this again for 15, 16 games ago. Oh, wow. Didn't know Struder had that in him. And now he just goes back to the guy that we saw in Miami. The reality is probably somewhere in the middle. I am still holding, but my projections are dropping a little bit. And I think when I do a next update run on the Cavs in the next few days, he might end up pushing outside the top 100. Maybe, rest of season. Not looking great. Jarrett Allen played 39 minutes, speaking of not looking great, 8 and 10 with no blocks. We thought maybe we saw a turnaround last game, but apparently not. He continues to be annoying, while Isaac Okoro started the second half instead of Dean Wade, and neither of those guys combined for anything useful. Even combined, they give us completely nothing. Now, the Celtics are on the first game of a back-to-back. Kristaps Porzingis and Jaylen Brown were both on the injury report heading into this game. They were limping around a little bit during it. I would not be shocked if Horford, Porzingis, and Brown all sit tomorrow. I don't know that. There was a Celtics reporter who said, maybe they're going to sit. Horford's almost definitely going to be out, and he had 7 and 10 in 24 minutes, which is like totally reasonable. But they've got a lot of back-to-backs coming up in the next 3 weeks. I think they've got one each week for the next 3 weeks, which is going to reduce Horford's output, and even at his best, he's not a great option anyway. So I don't think we need to be holding on to Al. Tatum dropped in 27 and 11 with 3 blocks. Jalen had 22, 5 and 5, while Maxim and Derek White, only the 14 points. We saw his usage had spiked a little bit. Good to see. It's sort of not good to see, but it's more in line with what we expect when it pushes down like this. He had 3 steals again with 2 threes. He'd been obviously dominating. He was on the Sell High show. I do think there's going to be some pullback from him. While Porzingis had 18 and 6 and Holiday 15, 3 and 4. Good shooting from Drew, but just lacking a little bit in the peripherals. Sammy Hauser did his thing, 9 points, 3 threes. That's what he does. You get nothing else. Might be a bigger opportunity for him tomorrow. With me expecting that Al is out, Maybe Kristaps is out. Maybe Jalen is out. And then you look at a bunch of other guys. Luke Cornett was actually a weird late scratch in this one. So they went with Lamar Stevens. I would guess they would have gone with Namias Queta, but he was inactive. He could have been an option there. And if Horford and Porzingis are out, they'll have no centers. So that'll mean Cornett, and it'll mean Queta, and it might mean Stevens to be able to get those minutes. There's also Shea Brissett who could slide in there, and all of them, depending on the status of Cornett and Porzingis, of course, all of them could end up as stream options in this scenario. Today's episode is brought to you by Dave. Finances can be intimidating. That is why you need Dave. Dave can make managing your money so much easier with an interest-free extra cash advance, fee-free goal tracking, and easy ways to find a side hustle to make more money. Dave is the banking app that's leveling the financial playing field. When you download Dave, you can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. It's part of Dave's extra cash account. Advance that money that you need with no interest and then settle up later. You can even build credit when you settle up on time. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to make their finances easy. So if you're in a pinch, get the help that you need by downloading Dave. Download Dave today at dave.com/lockedonnba. That is dave.com/lockedonnba. You could get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. Download the Dave app now or go to dave.com/lockedonnba. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Eligibility criteria and instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve. Member FDIC. Should we go into the next game? Yeah, we probably should. That's game one done. We've got 6 more to go. Let's talk about my Chicago Bulls, who's put the smackdown on the Miami Heat. They got out to a huge start. It was like 20-2 or something at one point. Or maybe that was the other game. There was 2 really big, quick starts. These games, I don't remember the exact scores, but anyway, Chicago wins at 124-118. No Zach LaVine, and we are seeing a big, big boost for Nikola Vucevic. The usage is up for him. He took 21 shots. He had 24, 12, and 7, 3 steals, 2 threes. I would say it's a little bit of a sell high for Vuce, but I don't know if LaVine's ever playing again for this squad. Part of the reason I was down on Vooch, age, outlier shooting last season, and the shooting has obviously carried over, but also a third offensive option. Usage wasn't going to spike, but Levine's gone. He's not there. So Vooch's usage is back up. And the numbers are pretty strong. Kobe White, Kobe White, 40 minutes for him, 26, 7, and 11, 4 threes, 45%, 26 usage, plus 20. This man is dominating at the moment. He's only a sell high if you get a top 20 player back. Otherwise, just enjoy what's going on. One of the best late round picks and hold recommendations that I've done in recent years, I think, which I enjoy because they're not all good. DeMar DeRozan got his free throws going, 10 of 11, but the field goals continue to be annoying. 43 from the field, 14 shot attempts. He had 23, 5, and 4, and it just doesn't feel like he's going to hit the top 50 this season. While Alex Caruso, you're going to be stunned to know this. The Rabbit Hunter was ruled in, available to play. He left in 5 minutes and didn't return due to an ankle injury. I think Vooch stepped on his foot this time. This man cannot stay healthy. You cannot roster him until we get, I feel like 3, 4, 5 games in a row. Even streaming him in at this point is risky because you never know when he's going to leave a game early. That meant that Ayo Dosunmu stepped up. And Ayo Dosunmu did step up in a huge way. 35 minutes for Dosunmu, 24, 8 and 5. 3 threes, a steal, 83% shooting, which is great. It's a fantastic line, no question about it. But I will look at this and give you some interesting things. Someone said to me on Basketball Monster in the chat, I said, man, do we go and grab Dosunmu? That's another big line. And that's really interesting. And again, it ties into the psychology of fantasy basketball. Another big line, huh? He had a 27 trillion 2 games ago. He had 9, 3, and 3 the game before that, 4, 3, and 3 the game before that, 8, 2, and 2 the game before that. He did have a very big line in this game, but he's been downright putrid every other game. There was a 15 and a 14 back then, and one of those was without DeRozan where he played 39 minutes. But this was great. 83% is so far from realistic, it's not even funny. 10 of 12 shooting, let's say it's 5 of 12. 6 of 12 maybe? Whatever. That's like 8 fewer points. And he was great. I am absolutely not falling for Dosunmu as a 12-team guy. Again, we had a 27 trillion in a start 2 games ago. We had 9 points in 38 minutes the game before, literally the game before this, 2 days ago, against the Nuggets. I don't care whether Caruso is in or out. I'm just not interested in adding Ayo Dosunmu and let a bunch of other guys go out as well. Not interested in adding him at this point. Pat Williams, it doesn't look great. 32 minutes, 9 points is not a good return. 2 rebounds is putrid. But 2 threes, actually, in honor of the first test that's happening here in Australia at the moment, shout out to you guys in Perth, he had a Richie Benaud. 2 points, he had 2 steals and 2 blocks. He also had 3 assists and 2 rebounds. It's a lot of 2s for Pat Williams. And part of the reason that we would roster Pat Williams is to get 2 steals, 2 blocks, 2 threes. The 3 assists is nice. Again, he probably should be on a 12-team roster, but don't let him be a cockblock to adding somebody else that you want more. Like, if you want Tari Eason more, don't be, I've got Pat Williams. Like, he's fine to have. Probably should be on someone's roster, but he's no impediment to getting better players because he is not a better player. On to the Miami Heat, it is just continues to be hard to evaluate because 4 rotation players are out. Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Josh Richardson, and Hayward Highsmith. Caleb Barton is probably the guy who's got the biggest chance of this continuing. 39 minutes, 17-11 with 3 threes and 4 assists. I really enjoyed it yesterday, I think it was. I had him as the stream of the day, and he farted in a bucket. Today, I think he might have been one of the streams of the day, but not the highlight guy. He puts up a big game. I think you want him in 12-team leagues. I would have him over Duncan Robinson long-term, and I would have him over everyone's best mate, Jaime Jaquez. Now, Jaquez, again, 22 points, looks great. He shot only 43% from the field. He played 34 minutes, no defensive stats, and 9 of 10 from the line. It is just very, very hard, I believe, for Jaquez to play enough minutes and do enough things to be useful enough in 12-team leagues when players return. Stream him by all means. But he is 127th over the last 2 weeks, which is fine. It's not great, though. Duncan Robinson, he's top 100 over the last 2 weeks. 11 points, 3 threes, 27 minutes. I don't think his value is going to last. I said already we can jack off Orlando Robinson.
Get that garbage out of here.
1 point and 2 rebounds in 14 minutes. They went the 3-center thing. We actually jacked him off last time they played because, it was yesterday, and said, oh, no, what we did say was he can move on. You can hold through the back-to-back, but Jesus Christ, that's terrible. Well, Kevin Love, maybe we do have him until Bam is out. 16 and 9, 5 assists, 3 threes. That is absolutely a 12-team guy, Kevin Love. No problem if you want to have a crack at that. Lowry had 17. He played 39 minutes on a back-to-back with 4 threes. He is very hit or miss, but he's worth a 12-team roster spot. While Jim Butler continues to be like, okay. 22-7-7 is okay. No threes, no steals, no blocks, subpar field goals, and 80% from the line, which is fine. But on 10 attempts, 8 of 10 is just actually mid and average. It's not good. It's average. And he has been look, we can talk about, and I know that you guys would love talking about how shit I am with Jordan Poole's projection. I know that I get that. But low-key Butler and in the other side, this DeRozan have been 2 of the biggest busts, I would say, for their relative draft spots. And they don't get talked about that much because they haven't been as bad as a Jordan Poole, but Butler was going at 20 in a lot of spots. DeRozan was going in the 3rd round in most drafts. And then not really close to that. I think Butler can be better than this. DeRozan, I'm not sure, but it's been disappointing. I think that's fair to say that they've been disappointing. All right, the next game, the score at the start of this one, Minnesota-Dallas was like 8. I think it was 18-2. Oh no! And in the end, Minnesota wins by 18 points. They were down 18-2, and they just turned it around, smacked the Mavs in the end. Wasn't because Anthony Edwards played well, because he didn't. 35 minutes, 9 points on 16%. Terrible. He did have 11 assists and 2 steals. Maybe if there are people worried about his hip, you could throw a buy low out there. But also remember, he's the 41st ranked player this season. The idea that he was a first-round guy this season was a little far-fetched. I was definitely a little bit too high having him at 18, but we talked about efficiency is going to be somewhat of a concern here for him. And if you ever make drafting decisions based on the fact that guys don't get hurt, it's silly. That's a silly drafting decision. Edwards can be better than this, so go and do buy lows. What do we do with the Wizard of Noz here, Naz Reid, who just went crazy? 27 and 6 with 7 threes. He played 31 minutes, which is absolutely 12-team worthy. I don't know how he's going to get 31 every night, and I don't think he will. But it's really interesting that he did. So, have a crack, see what goes on. I'm still not fully convinced on it. Townsy had 21 and 17, while Gobert had 8 and 12 with 5 assists. Rudy Gobert is crazy. 3 steals and a block. Bad from the line, but that is him. And McDaniels just the 24 minutes. We do not need to have Jaden McDaniels rostered in 12-team leagues.
Get that garbage out of here.
And what was also interesting is they just took Shake Milton out of the rotation. So they used Alexander Walker and Kyle Anderson sort of backup point guards in the second unit. Shake was out. They kept Troy Brown in. Alexander Walker had 13 points with 3 threes in his 20 minutes, while Conley had 14, 2, and 3. I'd been stashing Milton in sort of deeper bench formats, waiting for a Conley game missed or game rest or injury, and Milton would start and be good. But he's been bad, and he is out of the rotation, so he will probably move out of my rotation. Also, you don't roster Kyle Anderson in 12-team leagues. For the Mavs, Luka Doncic is still carrying pretty hard. 39, 6, and 13 with 2 steals. Great efficiency from the field. Great efficiency from the line. While Exum played 28 minutes. A little bit low on the usage. 6 shots. But 14, 4, and 4 gets it done. He remains a 12-team player. I think Derek Jones does too, even though it wasn't a great game. 3 points on 13% is dreadful. But I like that he started. He had 2 steals. That 13%, if it's 40% or 50%, then we're talking, 10 points, 4 rebounds, 2 steals, which is it's not great. But it's okay. It's okay to have him. I would have him over Grant Williams, who had 5 points in 36, but I wouldn't have him over Tim Hardaway, which sounds silly because Hardaway, again, did nothing, 27%. But Hardaway had 32 minutes, and while Kyrie is out, Hardaway and Exum are the guys I prefer over Jones at this stage, and definitely over Grant Williams. 10 and 4 for Timmy and 27% shooting is rough. No threes, no assists, no steals, no blocks. It's terrible. He's a hot and cold guy. We know this. But the opportunity to get some bulk scoring in and some threes in with good free throws usually is appealing. This just didn't work. Derek Lively, clear must roster, 32 minutes, 15 and 6, 2 blocks. Could he be top 50? Because he's 76th now, and he's 39th over the last 2 weeks. We put him under the lens the other day, talking about how some of what he was doing was pretty interesting and would he keep up that efficiency, and he hasn't kept up 91%, but field goals high, blocks strong, scored 15 points. Been an absolute rookie revelation, I would say. Derek Lively, which is great because the Mavericks were able to trade down and get him. So good for them. Today's episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's also the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's you against the numbers. You don't have to worry about battling thousands of other players, pros and sharks, with their hours upon hours to research and their algorithms to set up. It's just you against player projections. You just see the number and you say more or less. And with basketball season here, they'll throw up a points one and rebounds, assists or steals or blocks or threes or whatever, fantasy points. And you look at it, you put 2 to 6 of those individual player projection choices into your entry, and you can win up to 25 times back. It is as simple as that. It is so fast to do it. And they've also got the reboot policy, so your entries can stay in play even if one of your players gets hurt. If they get hurt in the first half and don't return in the second half, that player just gets rebooted. PrizePicks is the only DFS platform with an injury insurance policy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That is prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. The code is LockedOnNBA. You get a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports made easy. Okay, we've got the next one to take a look at, which was the Nuggets comfortably beating the Nets, who were on a back-to-back here. We know that teams can often struggle on a back-to-back. That's a relatively common thing. Denver 124, Brooklyn 101. On the Brooklyn side, no Simmons, no Walker, no Dennis Smith. Dennis Smith's going to be out the rest of this road trip also. Didn't we only play 24 minutes again? The minutes are a little bit all over the place because this was such a blowout. But 17, 4, and 8, he is comfortably exceeding my expectations at the moment. Cam Johnson, not a great game, 10 and 3. Cam Thomas, probably a worse one. The Cam Thomas problem is becoming something that needs to be addressed. 27 minutes, only had 23 usage, but an absolutely putrid minus 25. No threes, no assists, no steals, no blocks, 39 from the field, 50 from the line. He will get benched. He cannot continue to play this poorly and stick in the starting lineup. It's so hard to build, I think, a good team around him. And yeah, I was never in, and I remain on the outside. And my opinion on him has been the same the whole way through, even though sometimes it looks like it's wrong. I do think in the end it is going to prove right. Mikal Bridges, he stunk here. Talked about him being a sell high because he was shooting unbelievable numbers. I, under no circumstance, believe he's a top 15 or top 20 player, but I do believe he's better than this. 9 points, 0 rebounds, 2 threes, 38%. Finney-Smith did nothing in 16 minutes. O'Neal did nothing, but they just went like bench. We had 17 Jalen Wilson minutes, 15 Harry Giles minutes, 22 Trendon Watfords, and 26 Dayron Sharps. Sharp also flashing 5 assists, which is interesting. Not reading anything into the bench minutes of those guys. It's more important about what the starters did and how they sucked versus these bench guys that popped off. For the Nuggets, speaking of bench guys popping off, Peyton Watson, 18, 7, and 5, 1 steal, 2 blocks. Still really value him long-term in Dynasty. It's been rocky this season, but he is improving. The headmaster had 16 points in 22 minutes, Jamal Murray, while Jokic dropped a casual 26, 15, and 10 triple-double. Good for him. Good to see that efficiency jump back up after a little bit of a rough patch there. Aaron Gordon had 13, and Michael Ponder had 9 and 6 in 23 minutes. They did not start Julian Strawther. They dusted off Justin Holiday, who had 2 points in 27 minutes, while Strawther had 8 in 20 on 27%. So, with Strawther, I said, but maybe it's worth a stream with KCP out, but long-term I don't see it. He barely played in that first half when they were healthy the game before, and he is just not going to have long-term 12-team value. I think that is relatively clear. He's going to be inconsistent, and yeah, you will see people who get really excited when a young player has a big game. And I guess at times I am guilty of it too, but we always have to look at the context behind shit. And yeah, we can very, very clearly move on there. Christian Brown played 24 minutes, 10, 4, and 2 with 2 blocks, but this game was just so straightforward in the end for Denver that it's hard to take a huge amount out of it, I don't think. Next game. The Utah Jazz, the undermanned Utah Jazz, took on the Portland Trailblazers on the road, and they get a victory, 122-114. A lot to talk about here in this one. There was no Clarkson, no Markkanen, no George, obviously, no John Collins. So Walker Kessler rejoined the starting lineup, and he looked more like the Walker Kessler that you may have invested in the draft. 10 and 10, 7 blocks, 83%. Fantastic. He's obviously been nowhere near that this season. Let's hope he's able to stick in the starting lineup. I think any hopes of 30-plus minutes is not going to be there. But 27, 28, fine, reasonable. Colin Sexton, I think we've got to add him. 32 minutes, 27, 2 and 4, 65%. Taylor Horton-Tucker, as long as Keontae George is out, he's an ad. 23, 2 and 4 with 4 steals. They're good numbers. Kelly Olynyk, 2 points is yuck, but 10 rebounds and 7 assists is fine. But of course, there's just a lot of guys out. Markkanen will be back next game. John Collins should be back next game. Clarkson and George will be out a few, so that does help Sexton and Horton-Tucker, but the Olynyk one here probably doesn't work. Again, Taylor Hendricks was good. 10 and 7, 2 threes and a steal. I had him in the top 5 of the real draft. I had him top 5 of Dynasty rookie rankings. We haven't seen anything from him this season. We are going to. We heard this report that the Jazz are wanting to move on from John Collins. Like, sure, cool. You could even consider moving on from John Collins, I reckon, if you wanted to in fantasy. Especially in 10-team leagues, no need to roster him. Hendricks is not worth a stash now in a standard format league. In deeper formats, I've got him. Deeper benches. Locked on Fantasy Basketball, I've got him. I added him. So I just think it's going to happen. And it is sort of happening now. But there are a few guys in the way. But I don't know how long they're going to be there. We're not quite at luxury stash style for Hendricks in standard formats. We're not there. We're getting closer. Abaji dropped in 16 points in 26 minutes, while Fontecchio started, had 24 with 5 threes and 88%, which is not obviously a real number that's going to hold or anything like that. The big takeaways from this one are Sexton and Horton-Tucker. Yes, we're interested. Hendricks, we're definitely interested long-term. Good recovery from Kessler, and also Chris Dunn played 26 minutes. 6, 2, and 5, nothing super interesting. But again, it is hard to judge with Markkanen, Clarkson, Collins, and George out, with Collins and Markkanen maybe back next game. For the Blazers, they got some guys back. Ayton returned and Brogdon returned. Brogdon played 14 minutes off the bench. You could say that is because of the blowout, and that is a factor in it. You could say it's because he's back after 2 games off for knee soreness. That is also a factor. But he entered the game as like the 8th player. He came off the bench with Scoot ahead of him. Brogdon's sell high value was through the roof. We knew this. And I do think he will end up being a drop. 9 points in 14 minutes clearly is not going to cut it. And with Simons and Sharp and Scoot all there, it is hard to see how he does it. If I was in a situation where I wanted to make an ad of Colin Sexton, of a Warriors player, of whoever, Tari Eason, I wouldn't have a problem cutting Brogdon, honestly. Put Shaden Sharp on the sell high show, and the sell high slump smacked him right in the middle of the scrotum. 4 points in 27 minutes on 8% shooting, 7 rebounds and 2 assists. He played only 27 minutes because it was a blowout. And the things that I highlighted in that show was that is all well and good that he might maintain big minutes later on when guys are traded, but he cannot shoot at this level. And all of the regression basically happened in one game. You still hold him, but again, he was just so far above any expectation. Simons was also flying. He had 9 points in 38 minutes here. Played 38% shooting with 22 minutes. He had 6 assists. Don't worry too much about it. While Kamara played 24 minutes, 18 and 6. Good game from Tamani. But when they are healthy, there is a huge minute squeeze. Like, there's still no Jeremy Grant here. So what the hell do they even do with their lineup? Are they going to continue to go Simons and Sharp with Scoot off the bench and Thibault or Kamara at the 3, Grant at the 4? I honestly don't know. And this is, again, why I run into the problem with how do I even bother to keep Brogdon? Because there's not a starting role. Doesn't even look like there's a 6th man role. And you'd be battling with the 7th man role between Thibault, Kamara, one of those guys, and Brogdon. It's not enough. As for Thibault, 17 minutes, 3 points. Yes, the old Matisse Thibault is back. Still just remains a fringe, steely stream guy who'd been playing really well, but there is going to be a crunch that comes. Ayton only played 21 minutes, had 14. There are people who tell me they're going to drop DeAndre Ayton, which is crazy. This man is top 50 this season. I know he's had some issues, but Jesus Christ, calm down. And speaking of calming down, Sterling Henderson. Yes, it was a rough start, but as we all know, that it is very, very difficult to judge a rookie early in their career. You definitely can't say that they're going to be awesome, and you 100% can't say they're going to be a bust. I'm not saying that Scoot is not a bust anymore. Like I said the other day when he had, I think, his 2nd or 3rd good game in a row. But what you saw was I guess he can start to do it. And he should be rostered. We talked about this ad nauseum. We add, we hold in luxury positions, or not even sometimes, and we wait and give it a time frame. The time frame's pushed out now. 35 minutes, 23 points, 10 assists, 43%. Yes, the blowout helped. He's done a lot of this stuff with damage against some second units. I know that. But the talent is real. We saw the talent on tape in the G League. It just took a little bit of time. And I'm not saying that he has proven that he is good. He hasn't. But what we can say is that he's not a bust. Right? We could never have said that to begin with, but people did. But what we can say now is, okay, we've got some positive signs. Scooter needs to be rostered. And I would have no problem dropping Thibault. I would have no problem dropping Brogdon as guys from this team to get him on. There's going to be rockiness. I don't know what they do. They should be looking to see whether Scoot, Sharp, and Simons could all play together. Or at the very least, they all need to play 32, 33 a night. Forget Thibault. Forget Brogdon. They're not key pieces. The other 3 are. They are the key. Simon, Sharp, Scoot. They're the key to everything on this squad. So they are going to have to get those minutes in. The minutes are here. The production is here. I don't know that it holds, but it honestly doesn't even matter. We just grab him for now and we see where it goes. Again, a lot of things happened in this game that are weird. Low minutes, blowouts, still no Jeremy Grant. But I think you've seen enough to know that you should be grabbing Scoot Henderson if he was dropped. Next, we go on to the game in Sacramento between the Thunder and the Kings. The Kings win it 128-123, the final score. Shea was awesome again, 43, 6, and 9 with 2 steals. And it was also a really, really good Josh Giddey game. 18, 8, and 4, 3 steals. We love to see that bounce back because he'd been shithouse, obviously. Whether this holds or not, I'm not sure. Would I rush to grab him if he was dropped? Maybe. I'm not super enthused. Maybe. But it was great. And it was not great for Jalen Williams. The Bronco had 5 points in 29 minutes. He did get a steal and a block, but shot 14%. He'd sort of started to improve some little bits, but hasn't taken gigantic steps forward, and that has been a constant theme through 8 weeks now. Chet Holmgren only played the 13 minutes. He had 5 fouls, 14 and 10. While Lou Dort had a good game, don't fall for it, don't. 17 points with 3 threes and 2 steals for Dorter. Not much else going on there. We saw Usman Jeng's minutes push back down, just the 10 minutes with 6 points after. Last time out, he was pretty good. For the Kings, De'Aaron Fox, 41, 3 and 7, 2 steals, 5 threes. We love that. 61 from the field is great. Unfortunately, 73 from the line is not. And he did appear to hurt his shoulder at the end of the game. We just need to keep an eye on that. Nothing has come out at this point. But Keon Ellis looked great again. Second-year guy from Alabama, 17, 6, and 3 with 5 threes in 28 minutes. At some point, he will get converted from a two-way contract into a real contract. He is well ahead of guys like Chris Duarte and Davion Mitchell, who are DMP CDs here. Alice is not anyone we're considering much for 12, although that is a 12-team line. But we do look at that in deeper formats. 16-teamers, I'd be interested in Keon Ellis. Sabonis had 18, 16, and 7, while Malik Monk continues to be great. 33 minutes for Leaky, 18 points, 4 threes, 9 assists, a must-roster 12-team player. Keegan Murray continues to be the king of mid. 15 points, no threes, 3 rebounds. It's like Monte Morris in a stretched-out body. It's just boring as shit from this guy. I know, mate, you can drop as many 40-point games in Summer League as you want. At some point, you need to do something in the NBA that's not hitting corner threes. I know that sounds harsh, but he just continues to, I feel, underwhelmed. We're obviously, if you haven't already, jacking off Kevin Huerter.
Get that garbage out of here.
And Harrison Barnes.
Get that garbage out of here.
Both guys played under 21 minutes. Both guys shot under 30%. Both guys have been trash all season, most of the season. Do not have to roster either Huerter or Barnes. Get them out of here. You do not need them in a 10 or a 12-team league. What else happened in this one? Oh, this was Trey Lyles, who was ill before the game. He actually got put in the inactive list, and somehow they were able to change that and put him off the inactive list, and he played 19 minutes with 7 rebounds. That's just a deeper league thing, though, while Sasha Vezenkov, just the 10 minutes, even with Barnes only playing 21, because they're relying a lot on what Malik Monk is giving them. He is giving them some really, really important minutes at the moment. So now, of course, we've got the last game of the night, the game that we're all waiting for, because there was going to be interesting stuff happening. The Golden State Warriors and the LA Clippers. The Clippers win it 121-113. We'll start with the Warriors. Draymond was out, obviously. So they started John Kuminga. They did not start Chris Paul. Very interesting. So Kuminga started next to Looney. We'll start with the bucket. 25 minutes for Kuminga, 15 and 5, 2 threes, 50%. He had foul trouble. We'd already been talking about Kuminga as an ad about 6 days ago. Right, so he's an ad, remains an ad, more so points than categories, but he's a 12-team ad. Klay Thompson went bananas. So, to be fair to Klay, we put him on washed watch. I'm not taking him off it, because part of the reason, or part when you get older, is you can't do it consistently. You might be able to summon a couple of good games, but this is encouraging. He's not completely washed. 30 points, 8 rebounds, 2 steals, 60% shooting. Steph wasn't at his best. 17 on 29% is bad with 4 assists. And Looney had one of his better games, 8, 7, and 5 in 26 minutes. I still would not care to add him in 12-team formats. But the big shocker, I guess, came. Well, it was a little bit of a shock that Chris Paul didn't start. He played 29 minutes, 12, 2, and 3, which is fine, but not great. But they benched Andrew Wiggins. Wiggins played 22 minutes. He had 9 and 3. He did have 5 fouls, so maybe he could have played more. I haven't really considered the idea that they moved him to the bench, but they would have started him had Paul George been playing. I don't really believe that at all, but I guess it's a theory you have. But we've been jacking Wiggins off for 7 weeks now. So,
get that garbage out of here.
And they started Brandin Podziemski. Now, Podziemski's line looks trash on the surface. 4 points, a 9 to 18%. That's a Wiggins line. But I don't really care, because he played 35 minutes. He had 7 rebounds, 3 steals, 1 block. Instead of shooting 18%, if he shoots 5 of 11, which is like 45%, that makes it an extra 3 field goals made. It makes 10, 7, 2, 3, 1. And we take it every day. So Kuminga and Podziemski, the big winners here from a 12-team perspective. Dario Saric didn't really work out. They went with Looney more, so I don't think you need to hold Saric. And the other one we wanted to watch was Moses Moody, but he played only 16 minutes. Now, he had 11 and 5, which is good, but 16 minutes doesn't cut it. So it is Podziemski and it is Kuminga as the 2 guys that we go to grab. There is no guarantee that holds every game. There is no guarantee that they even have a run of top 100 numbers. Not at all. Like 15 and 5 is fine. 4, 7, 2, 3, 1 is fine with deficiencies. But it is good to see that at least we get something out of this, something we can take away. And I was worried that we might not see anything, especially if they had started Chris Paul, we would have and started Wiggins. Because this is what I said when Draymond went down. The biggest impact here will be not necessarily the Draymond suspension, but what decision they make with Wiggins and or Klay. And the benching of Wiggins has had a big impact here in providing that extra value. For the Clippers, I told you that Paul George and Ty Lue are liars. Sorry if they're listening. I know Paul's got his own podcast to do, but they did the exact same thing last season. He left a game with hamstring tightness in a blowout and said, nah, it's fine. I'm good, mate. I could have come back in. The same thing happened this season with his groin. Apparently, he was good enough to play in the second half 2 days ago, but wasn't able to play here and his day-to-day moving forward. I call the biggest load of bullshit ever. And I talked about it. I said this. They are lying, and I had pretty strong confidence they were lying here, and they were lying. I don't know what this means now as we move forward. How long is George going to be out? I've got no idea. They say day-to-day. Oh, it's not too bad day-to-day. I don't believe it for a single second, because why would I? Why would I when they just literally lied 2 days ago about the same injury? I'm not going to say that he's out for weeks, because I don't think that's true. But I can't believe that it's day-to-day. The good news is that Jim Harden went sick. 28, 7, and 15, 5 threes, 4 blocks, 92 from the line. That's old Jim Harden. He's a top 20 player over the last 2 weeks. He's actually top 25 for the season. You got him. Now, there was a reason he slid in drafts, because we just didn't know what the hell was going on. We didn't know when he was going to play, where he was going to play, how long before he started. Doesn't matter. He's dominating. Really good draft day steal. And Kawhi did seem to hurt his rib at the end there, but 27 and 8, 39 minutes continues to be great. The big winner from Paul George's absence, Norm Powell, even though he didn't start. 21 points in 36 minutes, and that's the key. 36. He hit 69% of his shots, which is, of course, nice, but also very good. And he is at least worth a stream while Paul George's groin continues to not bother him in the slightest. Don't even need to look here. It's fine. He's okay. What we also saw is that it doesn't matter that Paul George was out. Russell Westbrook's not a guy we need.
Get that garbage out of here.
19 minutes, 9, 4, and 2. Maybe Westbrook becomes a stream when Harden sits. But what we saw here is that there were some that were saying you're too quick to drop Westbrook because someone's going to get hurt and he's going to step up. Well, no. That didn't happen. So I think it's just going to be a Harden stream. And for full transparency, Russell Westbrook, at one point, mid-2010s, was my favorite player. I loved watching him play. I loved what he did for fantasy. Loved it all. I don't really have a favorite player anymore because I'm more and more in the work. But it should be relatively clear. I know there are going to be Russ stands that are watching this, and I apologize to you. You might want to go and stand over your poster and do some squats or something, whatever. Whatever you need to do to feel better. But it is not a coincidence that the Lakers sucked and they got rid of Russell Westbrook and they became good. It is not a coincidence that when Westbrook was starting for this team, they struggled, and then he moved to the bench and it all figured out. And yes, they were playing okay before Harden arrived. Okay. But even last season when he came in and started, they never really got to play with everybody. And there were nights when he'd just get reduced in minutes because he's just not that guy anymore. And he has failed to adapt himself enough to be that player. And I don't see it changing. I just don't see it changing. So we don't need to roster Russell Westbrook in 12 or 10 team fantasy leagues. 14 maybe, but that's about it. They started Amir Coffey in place of George. He had 18 points, the Farmers Union, with 4 threes. That's only a deeper league thing. Well, Terrence Mann sucked. He had 2 points in 20 minutes. And Zubats had 10 and 8 in his 30 minutes of action. I don't know. Do you think I'm being harsh on Westbrook there? I just think that it's relatively clear. And I know what his fans will say. Well, the teams just need to build around him. I'm sorry, you don't build around a guy that's not that good. That's not how any of it works. Adapt or die. Who said that? Schwarzenegger? Probably. Somebody said it. But I think that's a relatively fair assessment of where we're at with Westbrook at the moment, honestly. He's not that good, and we don't need to deal with him in any sort of fantasy setting. That's the 7 games done. Let us go in now and do a recap of the streams of the day. The 10-team stream of the day was Dante Exum. He had 14, 4, and 4 with no defensive stats, but that's okay. We like the line. Caleb Martin was the 12-teamer. Pretty strong response there. 17, 11, and 4 with no defensive stats. The 14-teamer was one of the worst bed shits of all time. 1 and 2 for Orlando Robinson. One of the worst ever. Move on from him. But we do like the 16-team stream. Brandin Podziemski. Well, I didn't know he was going to start, but he was very much available when we did this show yesterday. 4 and 7, 2 assists, 3 steals, 1 block. And the 2-point streams were Dante Exum. He had 23 Yahoo points and 28 ESPN points. Again, that works pretty well. What are we going to do? Let's do the monstrous line of the night. I don't think this is a hard one. I don't think there's too much to debate here. The monstrous line of the night does go to Slippin' Jimmy Harden, who had 28 points. He had 15 assists. He had 4 blocks. He was great. Not debatable. Awesome. The waiver wire line of the night. best player available in over 50% of fantasy leagues, and that does go to Cleveland, and it does go to Dracaris Levert, who had 26 points, he had 5 assists, he had 3 steals, he was really good. He'd been really bad for multiple weeks. I'm not going to be totally against you adding him. I don't think it's 100% a necessity, but whatever. He was good here, and we hope it continues. The young gun of the night, the best performance from a first or second year player in fantasy. This one also is easy. It is Walker Kessler in Utah, 10 points, 10 rebounds, and a massive 7 blocks. Let's hope this gets his season kick-started. And then lastly, we'll look at the dud of the night, the worst fantasy performer of the day. It gives me no pleasure, honestly, it doesn't, to tell you that it's Cam Thomas. He had 13 points, he shot 39 from the field, he had 50% from the line, and he didn't contribute in any other category. And that is a really stinking run of games at the moment for Cam Thomas. Now we go in to look at the top 6 players in each of those categories that we like to look at. We'll start off with our top 6 9-cat players. Number 1 was Jim Harden, followed by Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Walker Kessler, Klay Thompson, and Big Chungus himself, Nikola Jokic. Your top 6 players rostered under 50% of leagues. It is Caris LeVert, followed by Simone Fontecchio and Keon Ellis and Peyton Watson. Imagine that for a group. Fontecchio, Ellis, and Watson. Really like Watson long-term, and Ellis is showing out to be at least an NBA rotation caliber guard. And then we had Scoot Henderson, who was right on 50%, so I'm including him here, must roster him. And then Lou Dort, streamer, but that is it. Your top 6 players in points leagues, number 1 was Jim Harden, followed by Gilgeous-Alexander, Doncic, Jokic, Vucevic, and De'Aaron Fox, who did hurt his shoulder at the end, but he did also say, it's going to be fine. But of course, players lie, so let's see whether that impacts him at all. Now to round out the show, let's just do a quick recap of what we're seeing. I think Scoot's an ad. I think the Padawan Colin Sexton's a guy we add, and you can also just tack on Taylor Horton Tucker's name behind him. And then Brandin Podziemski is an add in Golden State, and I'd throw John Kuminga's name there. In fact, if it was a points league, more tailored recommendation, probably have Kuminga over Podziemski. But I think both guys are 12-team ads. In terms of drops, Malcolm Brogdon, I'm more than happy to jack him off. And Kevin Huerter, I also think is turning into that, or not turning, he's already been that droppable player. That will do it for me today. Don't forget, follow this podcast if you are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app. If you are on YouTube, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, leave your comments, and share it with your friends. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.